The strange thing about starting a live stream is I never know when the replay is starting, but right now I am looking through a book of Cold War propaganda. This is a rare book that you've probably never seen before. You can take a look at some of the scenes and hopefully they won't be censored on YouTube because some of them are quite graphic. But if you're looking for a 1986 book on what might be happening in the collective consciousness and how history may not repeat, but it certainly rhymes, then I want you to read Faces of the Enemy by Sam Keen. On these live streams, unfortunately, the camera is reversed, but you can screenshot this and then turn it around on your camera reel. Face of the Enemy by Sam Keen. Sam Keen is an incredible Jungian psychologist who went into the very much behind the scenes talks in the Cold War to hopefully diffuse the tensions between East and West. And if you paid any attention to what's been happening in the world in March, at the time of recording, this is March 2026, and there have, of course, been some global conflicts happening in Iran and various aspects of economics, politics, spiritual warfare even. We're going to discuss them today. And because you're watching the replay, I'm going to give you a book up front as the chat is getting active from Module 27 in the Self-Integration School on the theme of collective shadow and collective evil, The Roots of War and Terror by Anthony Stevens. Again, this is a book, the two books I just held up, The Faces of the Enemy by Sam Keen and The Roots of War and Terror. They're both from within my paid private coaching and teaching curriculum, but you're going to get them right up front at the start of this live stream. So even if you click off right now and you're watching on replay, you get two books that are absolute gold, and you don't need to stick around for the whole thing. But if you do want to stick around, the timestamps will be down below on the replay, and you can enjoy going from topic to topic and skipping your merry way around all of the collective shadow themes. I'm going to bring up the live stream on the phone so I can monitor the chat. And likewise, if you're tuning in live, let me know where you're tuning in from. I'm going to do a little audio check to make sure it works, forgive the feedback. Let's see. There's me watching my own stream. Strange thing about starting a live stream is I never know when the replay is starting. Yep, we've got it. We have got it. Brian, I see you in the chat. How are you doing, Brian? Great to see you. First message in the chat. Happy Friday indeed. Are you likewise feeling the collective tensions and anxieties as an American yourself of what might be going on in the Shadow Collective and whether or not we can solve some of these issues, personally speaking? In fact, the reason this is behind the scenes, right? The reason I'm even doing this as one of the talks today in the Friday live stream is that I just got off of a 2-hour seminar with my early access self-integration school students, and we spent the first half of the seminar talking about the political, the economic, and of course the personal experience of going through geopolitical tensions. What can we do to apply the principles of somatic psychology or Jungian psychology or transpersonal psychology to help us remain centralized and grounded in our own identity, our own general state of consciousness, rather than being too permeable for what's happening out there in the world. We just had a fantastic private small member discussion again over in the self-integration school, and I thought, why keep it all behind closed doors when of course I know pretty much everyone who's going to be watching this has likewise got their own issues or responses to the issues going on in the world right now. Let me know if you're feeling it too. Are you feeling the collective shadow energy rise? If you're watching live, this is an opportunity to work through some of the global themes. I see class in the chat. Hi, Jordan. I see Omega Color saying hello. And Brian dropping in saying, it's feeling like cynical times. I feel it penetrating my psyche for sure. Psychic penetration is an interesting term. Again, how close is the boundary? Boundaries should never be built too close to you as an individual. So a boundary on your heart should always be at least a few meters or a few feet away from your heart. A boundary in the mind shouldn't be closing you in like this, because if the news knocks on you, you're going to be rattled just by the basic, like the most pure emotional charge. A bad thing happens, bad energy coming in. If the boundary's right here, bam, you're hit with it. But if you build your mental boundaries and you build your emotional boundaries at a little bit of distance, you've got the breathing room. So practically this can mean limitations on news, limitations on contact, limitations on access to global conflict themes. But the penetration of the psyche might suggest that your mental boundary is maybe a little bit too close to the skin, and there's a bit of distance that can be made, practically speaking. It's fantastic advice. Personally, for myself, from an economic perspective, again, I'm not sure how many people watching this live stream are into investment and economic activities, but I have 4 personal trading accounts I shared on my Instagram today. Some of my swimming in the sea of red losses, or losses again, unrealized gains, unrealized losses, and I did not check any of my accounts for 2 months. I set my positions up in January. I'm working on 1 year, 3 year, 5 year time horizons. I'm not looking to exit any positions, so there's no sales to be done, and I just closed down and didn't check a single app for 2 months straight. If you're an investor who's watching this and you're looking at the markets constantly several times per day, imagine what it would feel like for you to not check the fact that you are losing or bleeding, even though the money is obviously invested in markets, so you're not selling it. Imagine 2 months of not looking and just using all that energy to create something else. For myself personally, I put it into creating the self-integration school. The curriculum is well underway. The test group is where it needs to be. The early access group is likewise looking very full. And on April 10th, we will have 40 members at least for the EU and USA calls. I wouldn't have been able to film the curriculum or be able to meet the new students if I was checking the markets every day. Imagine how ridiculous it would be. Imagine this. Imagine if you weren't even listening to me on this live stream because I was obsessed about seeing what the markets did today because it's a bad Friday in the markets and I'm down thousands and thousands of pounds and I was all worried and all anxious and I wouldn't be able to actually share, of course, my gift or my teaching or at least make an effort to try and help. Sadly, a lot of us do get caught up in these patterns, and I think it's because the boundaries are just a bit too close to the skin, especially when it comes to global collective themes. Again, 21 people watching live in the chat, about the same as a classroom in a self-integration school. We have a lot of conversation over there. I'd love to have the conversation here, so please do drop in. This is not a passive parasocial moment. I know we've got a dark, serious theme, but we're also going to have a little bit of fun in this live stream. So please let me know where you're watching from, and if you've got any questions specifically around how you're responding to the economic psychology, the political psychology, how you're feeling as an individual versus a collective. Give me themes to work on, write a question, and I can definitely go into them and give you as much help as I possibly can in 5 to 10 minutes on a free YouTube video. I see Mudigasa, hopefully I said that right, saying, hello from Egypt. Long time fan of your work, Jordan. It feels like a pressure cooker. It does feel like a pressure cooker. Egypt as well, you're not quite in the middle of the action, I imagine. You're not, hopefully again, please correct me if I'm wrong, you're not in direct physical danger, but the danger is kind of on the boundaries, it's on the periphery, unless you are living in one of the coastal regions. Again, I know there's all kinds of things happening, but do you feel that the collective state of the country is likewise pressurizing you, even if your immediate physical surroundings might be safe? Do you feel that gap opening up? It's pretty destabilizing. So I'm sorry, but also amazing that you're tuning into the live stream to get a bit of help, hopefully some emotional support on the theme. If you're joining live, once again, questions in the chat. You tell me what to talk about. We'll have a conversation together, or we can just enjoy the visual hook of a candle flickering on the stream. Zainab, good to see you smiling in the chat. We can go in pretty much any direction. Anyone who is joining now that didn't see me hold up the 2 recommended books from earlier, once again, on the collective theme, The Roots of War and Terror by Anthony Stevens. This book is about the psychology of being a warrior, being in war, and of course specifically what it means to have the terrorist mentality. I'm not particularly partisan or going to make this a political issue of left or right, but more the psychological nature of the conflict and how that affects both countries and individuals in different ways, maybe applying something like a Ken Wilber integral psychology perspective or a Jungian perspective on what it means for shadow projection, shadow boxing, archetypal themes. That's what we're looking at here. And the wonderful Jungian writer is Anthony Stevens. He also wrote the book Archetype, which I can get for you, I believe, more or less immediately. No, I cannot, because it's over there. It's a white book on that shelf. Actually, no, it's a black covered book just over there. You can see these are the Carl Jung books, the old hardcover ones. Anthony Stevens is just up there with his book on Archetype, which is also in Module 13 of the Self-Integration School, one of the top 104 books for a reason. Highly recommended. If you're not taking notes and like going onto your notes section in your phone, typing Archetype by Anthony Stevens, you are missing out on the opportunity. I know you're going to see many videos in the coming weeks ahead, but I'm giving you a golden book that can help you understand why things are the way they are. So please do pay attention when I recommend a book, because it would be a shame for the gold to slip through your fingers. It's a Californian gold rush, and your hands have thumbs, and the thumbs can capture a quick note on the phone, and you can go to a second-hand bookseller and get a book like Faces of the Enemy by Sam Kean. This is the imaginations or the hallucinations of the hostile imagination. Hostile imagination is a wonderful concept. There's this concept that Sam Kean talks about called adversarial symbiosis. What a beautiful word, just adversarial symbiosis. what it means to have a shadow boxing pattern with someone that you hate, maybe someone that you hate online, or a different country, a different race, a different gender, a different sexual orientation, a different belief system. You have an adversarial symbiosis where you maintain a sense of artificial superiority by putting them into an artificial and sustained state of inferiority, and you shadow box and shadow project downwards. But of course, within every shadow boxing relationship, there is always a reversal of the exact same feeling. For example, if you believe that you are superior to the person that you hate, you likewise have fear and suspicion and hostility that maybe they'll get an advantage over you, and that also causes you to be on the defensive. So, but well worth looking at. Again, Face of the Enemy by Sam Keen, this idea of adversarial symbiosis. In the chat looking now, will you be on long? I want to make some tea, but I don't want to miss much. Yes, I will be streaming for the next hour and a half or so, maybe even up to 2 hours maximum. Anyone watching on the review, they get to skip around and enjoy the timestamps. If you're joining live, you get the opportunity to ask me questions, and we talk about psychology, have a good time, hang out with the candle. You get the idea. I'm here to respond to you and your chat inquiries, or you can just enjoy the vibes. Better if we engage. Better if it's a real conversation. That's what I'd prefer. 25 people watching live. It's not a parasocial relationship. You're entering my library. You're coming into my room. It would be rude not to at least say hello. Drop me a pine emoji in the chat, maybe, if that's a low effort. Hello, I'm here, I'm watching. I get it. Please keep going. This is worthwhile. Or if you have a question for me, better yet, put that in the chat, and I will answer it. I see John saying hello for Greece. Hello from Greece, John. Hope you're having lovely weather over there. Again, I don't know whether or not you are particularly affected by the collective shadow conflicts that are going on in the world right now. I know you're kind of on the very edge of Europe down there, so it might be a bit of an issue, or you might feel immune, but I hope you're well nonetheless. If you're joining live and you're like, huh, John's not talking about anything, why isn't he being more entertaining? You have agency, you have free will, you can put a question in the chat. I'm like one of those, imagine like the inner work equivalent of a doll or an action figure where you pull the back of them, you pull the string, it's like pull. So Carl Jung was talking about in 1942, he was writing a book on this topic and this topic and this topic, and if you want to look at trauma in the body, then you need to... That's how we do these. If you're new to the live streams, I know it's been a while, it's been like 6 months since I've done live streams consistently, but questions in the chat equal words out of my mouth. You can pull the string on the back of my heart and get me to summon, God knows I need it, all of this information that's inside of me, and finally find a way to get it out into the world. Because guess what? You read all these books, you go a little bit loco if you don't get an opportunity to apply all of that information. So help me escape the prison of knowing a little bit too much about too many things all at once. Help me make it useful for you and things that you might not know just yet. Zainab says, I feel like I'm ignoring the world right now. Yep, that's a strategy. It's a strategy to be able to put up the boundaries and be intentionally ignorant for a period of time. The question I'd ask you and everyone is, if you haven't got the agency to be able to change or influence or significantly impact global events, is it worthwhile you scrolling on your phone and seeing all the horrific updates from the world? It's a moral question we all need to ask. I see Fahim also in the chat. Hello, Jordan. Good to see you here. Sapora, welcome back. One of my Shadowwork Library students from last year. Hello, Jordan. Hope you're doing well. Always love seeing your energy. These live YouTube videos are nice and bring me a sense of community in my little woodland realm. Beautiful. I hope you're well, Sapora. We have Master Slasher. Very ominous. The Master Slasher. Sounds like a horror name. Says, hey Jordan, have you ever taken psychedelics? What do you think about the consistency of people's experiences in DMT trips? So I have personally taken, again, this is not legal advice, this is not medical advice, I do not condone these things, and you need to work within the legalities of your particular country. I'm speaking anecdotally, I'm not speaking professionally, I'm not speaking clinically, nor medically, nor am I suggesting that you do anything that I have done or may have done in the past. With that all being said, I've taken magic mushrooms and LSD, and also smoked a hell of a lot of weed in my teenage years. So by the time that I was 20, I had taken my last... No, that's not right. The last time that I took LSD was when I was 21. So about a decade ago. Like, it's been quite a while, and I went sober when I was 22. So I haven't taken any drugs, I haven't done any drink, I haven't taken any of these substances in quite a long time. However, I went through some experiences with magic mushrooms and LSD that were interesting and novel, and ultimately I'd say that they could be placed on the spectrum of traumatizing down here to healing over here. They were at least over the threshold to more healing than more traumatizing. My weed experiences actually probably took me more towards traumatizing than healing. Again, I'm not saying the word trauma spectrum here. So we have a bruise. Imagine I punch myself like this. If I punch myself hard enough, it becomes a bruise. If, like the master slasher, I identify with a serrated weapon, I might, again, don't recommend YouTube policies. Isn't this insane? I have to be aware that I'm being algorithmically listened to so that I don't say a sentence where I indicate that there's something like this because I might be flagged as encouraging something which I'm not encouraging. See what I'm saying between the lines? Just calibrating. I'm now extremely used to teaching with no filter, uncensored in the self-integration school, and now I'm recalibrating to YouTube of I can't say adult words for adult context to make an adult psychological lesson. Anyway, let's imagine I bruise myself. Oh dear, ow, 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 I've got a bit of a wound. I wound myself. Now that's more than a bruise, it'll take longer to heal. I traumatize myself. Huge, huge distinctions in the words that we use and how significant that particular injury is. When I'm saying that marijuana is towards the traumatizing ends of things, I would place it in the category of most of my experiences I started smoking when I was 15 years old, socially speaking, would be a bruising experience or a wounding experience. I've never had a traumatic experience with marijuana, but I was likewise a pretty anxious smoker. Tried all kinds of strains, all kinds of variations. Again, legally speaking, you have to make sure. I don't even know if I can talk about this. Isn't that a shame? Do I risk the channel to talk about things I don't know whether I can talk about because of the community guidelines? I'll talk in metaphor. So, in metaphor, um, with various psychoactive substances that I've taken, I've noticed that the stimulation effects of going into altered states of consciousness are merely sugar rush equivalents compared to the actual sweetness of getting to a sustained, pure state of consciousness where that becomes your baseline. Ken Wilber writes beautifully in this shelf in the middle, that's Ken Wilber's integral psychology books and also some additional consciousness studies books in there, that there is a difference between a peak experience when you peak into an experience and a plateau experience. See the difference in a metaphorical mountain. When you have a peak experience, you are transported to the top of the mountain and you can see either above or below the clouds, depending on how high the elevation might be, and you get a taste of the landscape. You can see from the bird's eye perspective, but does that become a plateau experience? Does the peak likewise crash? When you take psychoactive substances, quite often because it's an exogenous substance, isn't created from within, you are quite naturally going to get the come down. You get literally a come down. This isn't true with all substances. There is increasing clinical research done around things like ketamine therapy, where it can be done in safe context, and I do believe that these can be done within certain situations with the right professionals. Again, legally speaking, depending on where you are in the world, it's not my personal thing. What I'm personally interested in is not teleporting to the top of the mountain, but how do we navigate there together in a sustainable way over 3 to 5 years as a typical time period for self-healing and self-inquiry, to then not have a peak experience at the top, but turn it into the plateau where we create a base camp and then we build for the higher level, which is not actually reaching the top of the mountain. Get this is cool, get this. I don't want you to just have a peak experience. Please pay attention to this. People do psychoactive substances of all kinds because they want to see something that they can't normally see. They want to get to the top of the mountain. I'm inviting you to see at least one stage further. If you are truly looking for an immaterial, intangible, ineffable, astral, etheric, causal experience, you not only get to the top of the mountain as a man or a woman, but your spirit ascends into the ether beyond the mountain itself. For you to have a plateau on the mountain in material form, not be at the bottom of the mountain in material form, but plateaued on the mountain, have an Everest base camp, as it were. You then have the base for consistent, daily meditation practice for decade after decade after decade after decade after decade after decade, 5 or 6 decades there. That's surely what you're aiming towards, to have a conscious death, right? Whole different category from I'm glimpsing something, let me lick a frog or inject something into my veins, versus how can I set up base camp at a higher stage of consciousness and then use that as the foundation for more intentional, sober-minded spiritual consciousness explorations. That's what I'm really into, and that's what I encourage my students to do. I'm likewise personally sober, and I set the example of sober living and sober healing and sober consciousness breakthroughs is very much a viable pathway. So that's what I recommend. But I have had previous experiences, so if you're like, oh, Jordan just hasn't tried things, I've tried things, trust me. It's just, there are better ways. Biased as I am, I think there are better ways. But a great question, and hopefully that answers. Again, if you're joining live, someone asked me, what do I think about the consistency of people's experiences with psychedelics in particular? Got some good questions in the chat. Thank you for asking them. I will move through them in a rapid fire way. I see Diane. Hi, Jordan. How are you? Good to see you, Diane. I also see some more people coming in. Okay, we've got Andrea as well saying, do you practice any meditations right now? In terms of my personal formal practice, as hypocritical as I am, I'm not doing deep, extended meditative practices. I don't have a formal practice right now outside of basically what I'm trying to do, which is materializing. I'll say it this way. Do I have any meditations? In a formal sense, no. In an informal sense, what I'm trying to do from my plateau experience at the Inner Work Mountain is create the curriculum, which is the Self-Integration School, and the Self-Integration School launches in about 2 weeks' time on April 10th. And for me, the meditative state of transferring wisdom or attempting to transfer wisdom and helping people out is the spiritual act of service. So, yeah, it is. A question coming through there, a comment from the Master Slasher. Haha, just as a disclaimer, I came up with this name many years ago as a teen. Sorry for the ominous undertones. Thank you for your answer. No worries, we all have embarrassing usernames as teenagers. I shall never reveal my teenage PlayStation name and all this kind of stuff. We've all been there. We've all been there. Okay. Fahim asks me, are there any fiction books that have had a significant impact on you? Yes, there are. There are several. I can even mention from probably some of my first fiction books that had the most impact on me. Reading Dostoevsky as a teen. Crime and Punishment, probably read this when I was about 16. Going into Dostoevsky and then Tolstoy and all the classic world literature, but particularly the psychological types, fantastic. Highly recommended. If you're interested in reading Carl Jung, or you're interested in even going to the somatics and transpersonal, and you haven't read some of the great, Russian classics or Western classics, they are deeply psychologically fascinating. Hugely, hugely recommended. Dostoevsky, great place to start. Got another question here? Thank you for joining live as well. We've got 32 people joining live. Let me know in the chat where you're joining from. And if you're watching this on replay, then know that there is another live stream coming up on Sunday evening this week at probably approximately the same time. I don't think I'm going to do an outdoor live stream this weekend because the weather hasn't been that great and it's a little bit cold and frosty. And I think I'll be able to have a better conversation with you here in the coziness of the library and be more responsive to the questions rather than go for a cold walk and talk. When the weather gets better, I will take us back out because there'll be more interesting things to see on the stream. But this weekend, we're going to be in the library roughly the same time on Sunday evening, if you're watching this. We have a few more questions. From Robert Leroy. How can someone who's self-aware of their narcissistic traits heal their narcissism? Or perhaps if they've been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, most clinicians say it's extremely difficult and nearly impossible. So most clinicians are locked in their opinions. If you want the Bible on narcissistic studies, or at least one of the most relevant kind of extended Bibles, you probably need to get a book like Malignant Self-Love by Sam Vaknin. He also has a pretty great YouTube channel. I imagine you've seen him if you've researched anything around narcissistic personality disorder. You've probably seen Sam Vaknin's channel, but this is a fat book that goes into pretty much every major avenue. It's got some formatting issues. I wish that Sam, for example, gave page numbers. There's no page numbers in the entire book, which is incredibly frustrating. How narcissistic of him. I know where it is in the book. I don't even need a page number. The thing is, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, Sam Vaknin writes from a position where he likewise, again, don't fact check me out, please do fact check me on this, that he is a narcissist, clinically speaking, and he wrote this book also as a clinician, self-assessing his narcissism and other narcissistic traits, and it's just a great book for everything you need to know. Likewise, in the Self-Integration School, in the first Sexual Psychology module, Module 1 on Trauma and Manipulation and Abuse, we cover all the narcissistic abuses within the 3 Sexual Psychology modules. Just as a little bit of a plug, we go into these themes in great detail in my school. Can someone work through their own narcissism? I think yes. Whether or not it's narcissistic to say that I believe so strongly in an individual's agency that no clinical diagnosis would be stronger than the human will or the strength of the spirit. You decide. Whether you've been labeled NPD or manic depressive or schizophrenic or psychotic or even more casually ADHD, autistic, the new trendy, or DHD, autistic and ADHD. Social anxiety, I see it in the chat. Why am I socially anxious? All these different clinical definitions are very modern inventions in the psychiatric space. They are manufactured to some degree. Yes, there is very good reason for clinical terminology. There's very good reason for insurance models. I don't distrust all of it, but I am skeptical of people over-identifying with clinical labels, and then especially if a clinical label gives them basically a death wish, as it were, of you now have NPD. It can't be fixed. You're a narcissist. It's over. I just don't think that the human spirit can be contained in such a way. Someone may have gone through dramatic, traumatic changes, but the research, and even in terms of neuroplastic changes in the brain, and of course states of consciousness from a more spiritual perspective, I'm pretty sure that someone who's gone through traumatic experiences can do a significant amount of rewiring and rewriting if they have enough will and agency to work through it. Practically speaking, what I would do is read all of the narcissistic literature. If I was labeled NPD or manic depressive or autistic, ADHD, I'd read all of the literature at a slight distance. I'd be very interested in the book. I'd make loads of highlights, and I would say, as I'm reading the book, this might be me. I relate to this, but I will not identify as this. I will not identify as as these symptoms and these systematic ways of being. And that's the way that I work through it. You can learn without becoming the thing. You don't need to worry that you are now the thing. Hope that helps. I think it is possible. I really do think it's possible. But also, anyone who's worried about being a narcissist and maybe being a bad person doesn't tend to watch a video like this. So whether you're watching live or on the replay, it's probably the case that you're not a narcissist, because otherwise you wouldn't watch videos that would reveal your narcissism back to you, and in a therapeutic intention nonetheless. Worth paying attention to. I'm back in the live stream, checking the chat for the next question. Human Design Heretic, welcome back. Says, unfortunate that I have to censor myself. It is unfortunate that I have to censor myself. Thank you for empathizing with me. I appreciate that. Definitely not a narcissist. Maybe an empath, though. Maybe a codependent empath. Or a people pleaser, human design heretic. What do we say about that one? Moody Gasser says, I know I'll be okay, talking about the collective conflicts in the world and the shadow dynamics of global war. The nation's collective death feeling is heavy, and he or she, I believe it's he, yep, this guy lives in Egypt. So Moody Gasser says that the nation of Egypt is feeling definitely heavy. I've had to ground extra lately. I took your advice from an old video of yours and added lifting and gym to my grounding practices. Fantastic, genuinely. I was saying to my self-integration school seminar students that I've had the privilege of working with multiple people in conflict zones over the years, and the ability to remain the light in the world when the dark times are there. To quite literally be a candle in the darkness for your friends and your family, and of course for yourself and your own well-being. That can mean things like prayer and meditation, but also, practically speaking, it's still trying your best to get good diet, doing your best to move your body and keep your physical biological self, healthy and active when the world is feeling heavy. You can amplify it like myself. I like taking weighted walks every single day. Currently, I'm working with a 45 kg or 100-pound weight vest. If you follow me over on Instagram, you'll see my stories where I've been doing that. 45 kg, 100 pounds as a minimum since the start of the year. Last 3 months I've been doing it. For the last 2 years before then, I had a 30 kg vest and also a 20 kg vest, and everywhere between I like symbolically taking on the weight and going for a nature walk. It grounds me down. Many people who are struggling from post-traumatic stress or current traumatic stress will benefit from lifting and catharsis and grounding via movement and sport. And I would even go as far to say that if I was, narcissistically speaking, throw back to just 3 minutes ago, if I was looking at your malignant self-love, I would say that it's a global rule. If I was the tyrant of the world and I was applying my inner work regime, that everybody should move every day, doing something that they love, or at least something that would be good for them. I do not think that it is self-love to not move your body. I don't think it's self-love to have a Netflix binge for 5 or 6 hours, or spend 3 hours on Instagram, or maybe right now you've got me in the background on YouTube, or you're tapping around, you've joined and left and joined and left, you're thinking of leaving right now, you're going to go do something else and fuck around on the internet. Yes, it can be good to take relief. I don't disagree with that. I likewise spend some time entertaining myself on screens pretty much every single day, and that's good. But attending to the life of the body, especially if you're in an active conflict zone and there's literal war going on around you, the body needs to have its own reality. And that means not dissociating or even researching via the screen, but actually giving the body some good news that day, which is adrenal hormonal dump of good feelings because you literally moved your body. It is medicinal. So I'd strongly recommend it. And yeah, Moody Gaza, I'm glad that you over in Egypt, you are doing your work to keep yourself grounded. It's a good example to set. Next question. Jordan, do you have any advice or practices for people who are overly permeable? This is a great question. People pleasers with poor energetic boundaries and have problems doing things for their own lives. Let's make this practical. Let's do a immediate. Okay. Do I have any advice? Everyone lock in. Let's lock in. People pleasers. Maybe you can relate. Do you have any advice or practices for people who are overly permeable and have problems doing things for their own lives? Here is Jordan's top 3. Let's do top 5. Let's do top 5 off the top of my head. So the first thing that you need to do, you need to have a sense of continuity in past, present, and future. You need to figure yourself out on the timeline of time itself. That was the past, that's the future, this is the present. If you are looping in traumas or wounds or bruises from the past, developmental psychology yet to be resolved, and you're anxious about the future, you are not in the present. Until you are in the present, you can't actually get a full sense of when a boundary is pushing into you or when you're not extending a boundary far enough, because you're going to be scattered across time. So the first thing you need to do is sort out the time axis. By extension, on the identity axis, I would even go as far to then extend the idea that you have multiple parts within you and you have multiple personas that you wear. If you were to identify yourself as a people pleaser, I would challenge that and say, well, in what context of your life are you not a people pleaser? Which parts of you, which subpersonalities, which archetypal forces, potentially, if you want to make it Jungian, are not people pleasing parts or behaviors or habitual tendencies of compulsive, strategic, pseudo caring as a way of keeping yourself safe? Recognizing your multiplicity, you've got many faces, many parts, many ways of expressing, helps to break up this thing that you are just a people pleaser. Kind of what I was saying about 10 minutes ago. Don't over-identify with any particular labeling. I know in a question I asked you to summarize, but definitely do that. So time element, past, present, future. Multiplicity of the psyche, different subpersonalities, different personas. Make sure that you know that you are not 100% of one thing or 100% of something else. The third thing is quite practical. This is to not start sweating the small stuff until you've taken care of the big stuff. Third point here, don't worry about how can I set a better boundary with my friend who keeps ignoring me, disrespecting me, taking advantage of me, if you haven't already asked the question of, do I even want this friend in the first place? Do I want to be in contact with them? Don't ask the question of how do I stop them monologuing on our 3-hour calls that they keep randomly calling me every week. Ask the bigger question of, do I even want to be on calls with them in the first place? Same for family members, same for maybe romantic situations. Ask the big question first before you start sweating the small stuff. When you do start sweating the small stuff, and then you're establishing a series of defenses and boundaries that are thematically organized. So here's my boundary around when I'm available. Here's my boundary around how much energy I give. Here's my boundary, maybe romantically speaking, about what I do or do not allow to happen to my body and how I participate in sexual relationships. All these small boundaries should be informed by the previous three conclusions. I'll give you an example. We're all good. There's enough fires in the world right now. We don't need a fire in the inner work library. First example, past, present, future. If you have resolved a developmental trauma related to your mummy issues or daddy issues, and you know that you currently have an issue in the present based on a particular relationship, you know that you're not looping on a projection or a transference of something that happened in the past that you're imagining is happening in the present. You are literally in contact with a literal person who is crossing your boundaries. The second principle, which we're going into, is if you recognize that you are primarily a people pleaser, you're not fully a people pleaser, can you take a bit more space for maybe the part of you which is a really independent man or woman? You're in contact with that. 5% of you, 10% of you, a creative project, a business project, a spiritual project, maybe your health, maybe your fitness, maybe your sport. When are you somebody who really does things on their own terms and doesn't do it for everyone else? There will be an aspect of you like this. It might not be very large. It could even just be there's a certain ritual where you go to a certain type of restaurant, or you have a certain coffee shop that you go to, and that's like your thing that's just for you. Can you find that and then expand that? Expand that aspect of the identity. Once you've expanded that aspect of that identity, you then ask that part or that subpersonality or that aspect of self the big question: do I want to be in a relationship with this person, full stop? You're then applying present moment, specific subpersonality, particular relationship, big question, and if it's still a yes, you then start working on the small stuff, which are the practical boundaries. And then the fifth thing, which is how to enforce a boundary, is the ability to say no. No. Sorry, I'm not available. No, I don't want to do that. I appreciate the invitation, but I'm not going to do that this time. No, thank you. Stronger situation. I said no. Look, we spoke about this last week. I'm not available for this anymore. Even stronger situation. Look, this is the last time that I'm going to say this. We are not doing this again. No. Even stronger situation. Get the fuck off me. Fuck you. Go away. Don't you fucking dare. You can scale that up depending on what boundary is being crossed, depending on how defensive you need to be. But that fifth and final point, the actual no, the actual push, the actual fold, that is downstream of all the different categorical identity and time-based and relational bigger questions and particular boundaries and particular contexts within the relationships that you're asking. And if you want to unlock your no, I recommend doing things like vocal catharsis and physical catharsis. There are a series of bioenergetic exercises. I teach this in module 2 of the 3 somatic psychology modules inside the self-integration school, where you are working through how to express force and assertiveness with both the voice and with the body. Physically speaking, we push. You can see the candle there, right? Like push in the air. I wonder if I could airbend it like this. Wow, wow, push. But it's push, and a no is a push. No is a verbal push. If you don't have the ability to do a verbal push, there is a whole wide world of somatics that you can explore. You can do all kinds of transformative workshops. There are many being available around the world right now. You can do online courses. You can read books like Alexander Lowen's bioenergetics books, but you need to unlock your no. Before you can say yes, you must know how to say no. For your yes to have any value, your no must have conviction. I will say that again. For your yes to mean anything, your no must mean everything. Those are my 5 points that I made up on the spot. Probably work. Hope that answers the question. Take a sip of my coffee. That was a good one. That was good. If I had an editor, I could clip that and turn it into a YouTube video. But this is a live, and it's 35 minutes deep, 38 minutes deep. So you found it because you're here as one of the core OGs in the library. As the candle burns down a little bit, I think we're okay. We're okay. It's nice and dramatic, isn't it? Nice and... Ooh, it's YouTube. Questions in the chat. Hetty says, brilliant. Thank you, Hetty. I appreciate that. And C77955 says, taking notes, thank you. Appreciate it. If you've got any questions for me and you want me to answer your question, maybe in as charismatic a way sometimes not as charismatic, maybe in a jokey way, or at least give it an honest effort and just read out your comment from the chat, please let me know and type a question in the chat for me. Scrolling back up from about 10 minutes ago. This is a good question. Diane asks, in reference to one of your earlier videos, have your thoughts changed at all about the idea of someone being born evil? Ooh. The book that we need to go to is Evil by John Sanford, which thankfully is here. This book is likewise in Module 27 of the Self-Integration School. I picked up my nice second-hand copy here. Evil by John Sanford. John Sanford is a Jungian therapist, Jungian psychologist. He also wrote The Invisible Partners, if you've seen that recommendation from me before about romantic psychology. And this book is about the shadow side of reality. I can't remember specifically what John talks about in terms of whether or not he believes that people can be born evil. But my current conclusion is that I do not know. And I will not pretend that I know. I think it would be a mistake to make a categorical conclusion that because of some particular metaphysics I have, that a soul would have a divine mission. Let's imagine any kind of dictator, any kind of horrible lifetime criminal. Are they born evil? I don't know what I said in previous times, but for the sake of honesty, I can imagine, thought experiment, let's all do a thought experiment. If God decided that an individual would be a terror to their fellow man, and that was God's plan, was that predetermined? The global conflict that's happening right now, was that written on God's heart? Depends on your perspective on free will versus determinism. Depends on your perspective of whether or not a baby can be born like a bad seed, rotten to the core. They might smile and gurgle and belch and fart and do all kinds of cooing and giggling noises when they're small. But you know there's a little tyrant inside, there's a little murderer beneath those smiles. Is it then the time travel thought experiment of going back in time to kill a certain moustache painter? You get the idea. But were they meant to be evil? Were they meant to be evil? Were you meant to have evil in your heart? This is where we make it personal. Everyone watching this live stream, I'm not an evil person. No, I haven't killed anyone. I haven't started any international conflicts. Yes, but you have lied. You have cheated. You have betrayed. You have hurt. Whether physically you've hurt someone or emotionally you've hurt someone. You've done this. We've all done this. If the evil in your heart is a scintilla of the greatest evil that plagues humanity, and the shadow side of reality is part of the human condition, who am I to say, or you to say, that someone is born or not born evil? If it is a resounding, consistent theme of the human story, to have the choice between good and evil, to have the choice between good and evil would pre-assume that there is a certain portion of evil, or the proclivity to potentially choose evil within each man or each woman. Right? Let me know if you're following in the chat what people's questions are. We can make this a nice discussion point rather than me doing a series of other discussions. If you have anything to say on this one, please do let me know. This is a great philosophical debate, and I think there'll be many different perspectives on this, some more right than others, some more wrong than others. I will not say which ones go where, but I'm sure you will have your judgments to cast as I read out the comments from the chat. This is a good question. I often wonder this myself, if people are born evil. We all have both in the beginning. The bigger picture also is both, always. Fahim says, please share your own take on free will versus determinism. I'm immensely confused by this at this stage of my life, and does this even matter? What did Jordan think about free will and determinism? This actually came up in the Self-Integration School last week in one of our private seminars, and I told my students, after a lengthy discussion, which we don't have time for today, I act as if I do have free will. I assume that I have free will, and I act as if I do, while also appreciating and accepting that I have been given marching orders from above or from deep within, whether you would like to call that the soul's voice, the higher self, or God, him, her, itself. That is up to you to choose the syntax and the semantics that works for you. I think we are free will. Free will is painted on the canvas of determinism. You are given a defined canvas made of a certain material, but you are the artist who paints with the colours of your life, and that is your free will. Or at least, I like to assume that. Helps me to stay sane. What do you think? Kathleen says, do you think original sin is another way of talking about the shadow? The original sin question is fascinating. If you look into early church history, and there's several books I have up there on my kind of Christian theology shelf of what was happening in the first 400 years, roughly speaking, of the Bible being written and rewritten, the idea of original sin really does have a tremendous amount of complexity, which I won't be able to cover here. It does speak to the shadow side of reality. Practically for any individual, if you're working through the idea of whether or not you are born tainted, or you're born into an evil consciousness, again, I don't know the answer. One side of the coin would say there's potentially an irrevocable stain on the human soul. And the other side would say no, that's not true. But we do have the proclivity and the tendency to stain our own soul through our moral choices, or more accurately speaking, our lack of making good choices. I lean towards that side, but I cannot say definitively whether or not we are tainted. Again, people would have very strong opinions on this, but I don't know. The crazy thing that's happened to me psychologically, it's just a tangent on my psychology. If you're ever wondering like what it's like to be to have the inner experience of reading as much as I read, and teaching and having it's so much. Okay, here we go. Whoosh, here we go. Fantastic. To not only have read all these books and spent the tens of thousands of hours studying, but then to have done the therapeutic client work that I've done, where you really, really see the insides of people who trust you to go there in the darkest and most confusing places. It's like you've experienced dozens and dozens and dozens of lives in a single life. And you can see full yet partial truths at many different levels of consciousness and from many different philosophical angles of approach. So the more that I read, the less that I know. As cliche as it is. It's bizarre. It's honestly bizarre. I remember like a year deep when I'd read 100 books or 200 books or 350 books. When I started the YouTube channel, I'd read 350 books. Now we're well over 700, read 200 of them twice, typed up 1,000,000 words, blah, 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 blah. Here's the pitch. But some people have never heard it before. I read lots of books here, there, all around me. Got books over here, got books over there, books everywhere, but not a page to turn. I don't know. The more I read, the less I know. And that's not even me trying to sound wise. It's actually frustrating because I'm trying to put together a curriculum and I'm over halfway there, and I am mostly living on a prayer because I have to present every single duality from every single perspective, and that's what it means to be truly self-integrative. One of my definitions of what it means to have integration is to be differentiated but not divided. I've got the self-integration school. Launches in 2 weeks' time. I've got 40 students ready to go. What is integration? To be differentiated, but not divided. To be able to call a thing, this candle, this flame, but not just the candle, the wax of the candle, the drop of the candle wax down the side, the wick, the burnt wick, the fiery tip of the wick, the base of the flame, the tip of the flame. How differentiated can a single whole thing be and yet not be divided? I refer to it as the candle, but we can actually differentiate. How can you bring in conceptual categories of things are their own sub things and they all fit together, and that applies in a candle, but it also applies to you, your different sub personalities, your different parts, your different wounds, bruises, and traumas at the somatic, emotional, mental, and spiritual level. Different archetypal influences, the past, present, and the future. Can you differentiate the psychogeographical, four-dimensional structure of your identity from cradle to crypt, and yet not make them divided? That's what I try and give an honest attempt at for all of my students in the 2 years maximum that they get to spend them inside the self-integration school community. We have 2 seminars per week. We try and work it out time after time. I give them the best 104 books I found on the themes, and hopefully at the end we get at least 80% towards the point of we are differentiated but not divided. That's what we're aiming towards. That's what we're doing. That's what I'm trying to do at the very least. Getting back to the questions. On the topic of evil, Diane says, I knew someone, a former friend, who claimed her father was born evil. He abused her horribly as a kid before he passed away. It's a tragedy. So in the chat, a soul group perspective would suggest souls could have pre-agreed evil actions to provide the circumstances for the other soul's growth and progression. Fascinating comment right there. People who are in the New Age space and they believe that they're given a divine twin flame or spiritual light worker mission, they're one of the 144,000 and they're here to help uplift consciousness. You need to consider from historical example that there are many, many cases. I mean, I've got a variety of history books here. I'm not sure if any of them are relevant. Imagine I just hold up 3 hyper-specific history books. History book, history book, history book. They're over there. They're elsewhere. All major human conflicts ultimately have led us to the point that we're at today where you're watching my live stream. Isn't that crazy? All the generations of war and death and birth and joy, it leads to this moment where you are the generational inheritance. You are the generational inheritor of this moment where we're buggering around on YouTube talking about duality and perspective and original sin. Some random British guy on the internet in his little library. Was it all worth it? All of that pain and that strife collectively for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, what was it all for? Would you say, pop quiz to the chat, please engage with this one, is humanity, this is interesting, please pay attention, please engage with this is the most fun if you engage with this question I'm about to put in the chat. Compared to 5,000 years ago, really consider this, is humanity more conscious and more awake now than back then? Yes or no? Yes, humanity is more conscious than 5,000 years ago, or no, humanity is less conscious? We've got one no over here. 100% yes over here. Which one's going to get to 5 votes first? The yeses or the noes? Yes, more conscious from Zainab. Yes from Yinglan. Yes from Sapora. Need some more no's over here. No from Jess. Ooh. We're gonna decide. It all comes down to this moment. 40 of us in the live stream. And we have one more yes over here, and then another no, and then someone sitting on the fence 50-50. I personally believe that we have become way more conscious. We have access to information and states of prosperity that were unimaginable before. The very fact that you have enough leisure and safety to tune into this live stream is a testament to the scores and scores of servants and invisible helpers that live in the world and created all the material factors around you to allow you to enjoy a moment of leisure in the evening where you get to learn for pleasure and leisure. I hope this is an educational experience. I'm assuming it is. Your ancestors, even just 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, very, very, very unlikely. I've got Maslow's books over there. I'm not going to reach up and get them. Imagine how to put Abraham Maslow book. Abraham Maslow's pyramid of self-actualization starts from the base of survival. And at the highest level, we have meta motivations and meta needs. Maslow talks about a list of at least 13 qualities of meta needs, or B values, like beauty, wholeness, truth, dichotomy, transcendence, perfection, creativity, connectedness. All of us in this live stream have a lot more possibility, generally speaking. There's some things that we don't have, like a local community where we're connected to each other. I get that. We're also more dissociated with screens. I get that as well. But the greater self-actualizing values of human consciousness have never been more available or accessible to more people than this time on planet Earth, because we have more and more tools and more wealth, globally speaking, to be able to spend more time meditating and healing. The fact that you can spend time listening to me is a testament to the fact that humanity, from my perspective, one idea, has gotten more conscious over the last 5,000 years. On the flip side of things, we have less community. I try to do what I can in a self-integration school, and we had a call just now, 16 people. And it is a community. It's a real community. There's real connection and love between these members. Again, people can choose whether or not they want to say I love you to a fellow member or fellow student. I don't tell people I love them directly, but we can feel that there's connection, there's passion. One member shares something that's sensitive to them, and they've got a difficult situation. Another member raises a hand, gives some advice. Someone else gives a moment of congratulation or support. I then help them maybe work through a thing in terms of a little workshopping moment. There's the ability to help and care for each other and connect with each other is tied to the fact that we are more conscious as a collective than ever before, and yet the shadow side of reality likewise grows in proportion at the golden and the negative shadow. We take a psychosynthesis model. So within psychosynthesis, we have the three stages of the unconscious: the higher unconscious, the middle unconscious, and the lower unconscious. Middle unconscious, let's just call that the subconscious for now. Things that are within range and within reach, but generally not operating in your day-to-day awareness. What we're interested in: higher unconscious, self-actualizing values, true peak performance, peak humanity, peak connection, and then the lower grade shadow behaviors, which is everything we spoke about with evil and sin and malice and all the issues that humans have faced. When consciousness expands, you don't get to choose one direction. You have to go in both directions. So in some ways, I suppose maybe the conclusion is, I would say, frustratingly, we are both more conscious and less conscious than we have ever been. But that's not actually true, because I think categorically speaking, we are still more conscious. It's just in certain areas of the human experience we become less conscious. For example, our relationship to the land. Very, very, very normal for people. Even about 200 years ago, so pre-industrial revolution, let's imagine agrarian communities around the 1800s before cities became a particularly large thing. Definitely in the 1700s, most people did not live in cities. About 90% of the population across the world lived in the countryside and not a city or even a large town. Your ability to identify wild herbs and be in touch with the seasons and probably live based on circadian rhythms that were normal and natural and healthy, much, 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 much more conscious than the way that I exist based on Californian time, despite being in the UK, where I'm waking up in late afternoon to then do live streams late at night with two artificial lights in front of my face, this random artificial light kind of stream of nice cinnamon essential oils, and currently got some nice cinnamon bark, some organic cinnamon bark coming right at me into my face. Just, it's fake, it's not real. Why don't I have real cinnamon? Well, actually I do, I have organic cinnamon bark, so actually I do go for high quality extracts, because otherwise it affects your sinuses and you should try and get the best things that you can have. But this candle's clearly got some shit in it, and it's here. You get the idea. What are we doing? We're both more conscious and less conscious, but in being aware that we are less conscious of certain things than our ancestors, we can then bring in more consciousness around these things and hopefully tilt the scales a little bit more towards greater consciousness. Good conversation. Let's change the topic. Any questions for me in the chat, please repost them. Actually, I'll do it that way so I can take a breather and a break to just take a little sip of some coconut water. If you've got a question for me on a completely unrelated theme, now is a transitional moment, about an hour into the live stream. If you're joining live and you haven't been here the whole time, the replay will be available on the channel within a few hours after this ends, with timestamps as well. One of the important things to do is also give your eyes a break, especially when you've got the nice bright lights. Thoughts on CBT? Not much, to be honest. Question from Ying Lan. How much self-grandiosity do you think is good? What would you say are warning signs of unhealthy grandiosity? So, in Facing the Dragon by Robert Moore. Facing the Dragon by Robert Moore. Wonderful, you guessed it, Jungian book on confronting personal and spiritual grandiosity. This is the book. Please. Remember what I said earlier in the stream? You've got thumbs. You've got free will. I'm recommending the best book on the theme of grandiosity. If you've never read a book on grandiosity and overcoming personal complexes and archetypal inflations, this is the book. Facing the Dragon by Robert Moore. With that being said, and now just like maybe 10 more people like actually buy the book. So please forgive me for being kind of forceful about it, but I know that, oh yeah, whatever, I'm on the toilet. Well, stop wiping and start typing. Facing the Dragon by Robert Moore. There's a really, really wonderful point that's quite controversial, which is that grandiosity, everyone experiences grandiosity because everyone experiences superiority and inferiority dynamics within. In some circumstances, you believe that you are greater than. In other circumstances, you believe that you are less than. The grandiose individual by default believes that they are greater than most other things, most other people, most other situations. And then we ask the question to get granular: is that grounded, positive grandiosity, or is that ungrounded, delusional, negative grandiosity? How do we make the distinction? Let's work this out. Ask yourself the same question. Am I greater than everybody else and all my life situations in a way where I'm using this to my selfish, malevolent, maybe even evil advantage, and I'm feeding off of that power trip in a low grade, low consciousness, murky, muddy, clutchy, almost demonic kind of way? Am I feeding on my power? And it's a huge, self-inflating, ever expanding sense of I am the best? Or is your grandiosity still the same exact energy of I'm greater than most other things, most other situations, but there is a lighter quality? It's an uplifted, inspired feeling. For example, let's imagine that you are a world-renowned dancer and you have won many awards. You're on famous Broadway shows, and your name is written quite literally in stars and lights. And people travel from around the world to see your performance of whatever incredible show that you are the lead in. You have been objectively written in the papers and online that you are the best insert type of dancer of this generation, if not of all time. Oh my god. Superiority complex, here we go. But you are actually the shit. You are the real deal. And the whole world says, yes, please give us more. Oh, talented one. Should you pop that grandiosity? Or are you in contact with actual baseline reality? If you're asking the question, again, going back to this original question here, of how much self-grandiosity do you think is good? What would you say are warning signs of unhealthy grandiosity? The first warning sign: the amount of superiority that you feel within is untethered from the objective reality and subjective reality projections of those around you. If you believe you are the dog's bollocks and the world says you're the dog's bollocks, you're probably, you know what. Second point, after reality testing, if you notice that the quality of your grandiosity is fundamentally self-serving at a lower level of needs, that's probably a warning sign. Truly uplifted, almost spiritually inspired giftedness is very rarely that kind of like low, murky energy. And you might see this in maybe you see examples online of people who get rich quick, and because they haven't worked on their consciousness, they choose to spend the money on questionable or even immoral actions and behaviors. They might be, the king or the queen of whatever they're doing in particular, but they weren't using all of that power for ultimately uplifting and clean-minded things. That's the second thing to pay attention to. What is the quality of your grandiosity? The third thing that's worth paying attention to is grandiosity. This is a real one. This is like, everyone, please pay attention to this one. Think of the thing that you are best at, of all the things that you do. It could be a literal thing, it could be a skill, a sport, a certain quality of life. Like, I'm a kind person, I'm a considerate person, I'm an intelligent person, I'm an empathic person. Whatever you're the best at, like, everyone would agree. Everyone would agree. Everyone. Even you. You don't doubt it. Can you also flip yourself to the shadow side of reality and consider, without losing your center, an inferior position to that same strongly held belief and value? I would go, for example, I am a well-read man. I think that's fair to say. Can I consider, without being ungrounded, without having the shadow boxing, oh no, I can't possibly look at that idea, that I am not a well-read man? I am an athletic man. I look after my body. I've trained every day, often multiple times per day, for the last 8 months, going on 9 months straight. Can I also consider that I am a lazy, undisciplined, out of shape, unconditioned individual? I can, and I smile about it, because of course I am both. Of course I am both. I don't train every single session exactly as hard as I should. I do mostly, but I don't always. Sometimes I delay a session, or even skip the second workout of the day. Sometimes I eat junk food. Likewise, I'm well read. I'm not as well read as I could be. I am extremely underread in certain aspects of psychology that people would say is extremely important for me to be informed about. But I trust that other people cover other aspects of psychology, and I can accept that, you know what, I don't know when I don't know something. One of the members today in the seminar said a very particular word, and I have, I think it was, I'm not going to say it. What was it? I think it was eschatology. Eschatology was the word that came up in the seminar today. Do you know what that word means? I didn't know what it meant. I'm meant to be a well-learned man. Eschatology meaning. If anyone can guess this, you win golden points, because I had no idea with what this meant. Eschatology. ESCHATOLOGY. They just brought it up casually in the seminar. We're talking about the global conflicts and geopolitical tensions. And they said, if we look at eschatology, well, what's eschatology? And I said to them, I don't know what that is. Could you explain that to me? I'm okay with considering the opposite of what I hold as my strongly belief, like strong superiority. I'm well read. I know generally a lot of things, but I don't know everything. And I'm willing to just learn and keep like deflating the superiority. Eschatology, because I can't see anyone in the chat just yet. Definition, great word of the day. Here's your word of the day. Eschatology is the branch of theology concerned with last things, death, judgment, and the final destiny of humanity and the cosmos. Very cool word. Very cool word. I had no idea what it meant, and now I've learned it, and now I've shared it with, 50 members watching live, and, 50 members, you're not members of Self-Integration School, 50 audience members, including yourself, and then, I don't know, 1,000 people watching it on replay? Maybe, who knows? Yeah, so how do you solve superiority issues? First thing, here's the question. How do I know whether superiority's gone too far? Reality tested. Does the world think that you are what you think you are on the inside? Check the quality and the clarity of your superiority. Is it used basically for moral goods or moral evils? And the third point I'd recommend is, can you consider that the exact opposite value that you hold so dearly as your superior position can also be simultaneously true in certain contexts and certain situations? Or do you cling onto the belief that you must maintain the power and superiority in this one thing at all times? Hopefully that answers the question. If you have any more questions for me, you know what to do. You put them in the chat and I read them out. Question from Sapora. When you are more conscious and aware, does that mean you have more responsibility and morality to your actions? Yes. Or can someone choose to ignore it more if they are more conscious in life? Great question. You know what? So at the first hand, yes. Great question. I'll read it again. When you are more conscious and aware, does that mean you have more responsibility and morality to your actions? Or can someone choose to ignore it more if they are more conscious in life? Fantastic. So we have to clarify that. Responsibility in which context of life? I'm responsible in this moment for you, listening to my live stream, engaging here, and everyone else. If I start saying cruel, evil, ignorant, misguiding things, I have failed in my moral responsibility, because I'm aware that actions and words, being actions, have consequences, and the consequence is maybe if I say something, this has informed my entire YouTube journey. If you want to be a content creator, if you want to teach on the internet, you need to know that anything that you share online, this is going to really, really get people nervous, but it's true. It's true. Ready for me to crush your dreams. When one person's listening to you, you have a responsibility to not lead that one person astray. If you reach the point and the privilege and the blessing that I've reached over YouTube in the last 4 years of having several million views across the channel, if I was sharing ignorant, uninformed beliefs, especially on sensitive topics that lead people into bad states of mental or physical health, I personally believe that I take on the karmic consequences of that. Vice versa. If you've done good in the world, you take on the karmic consequences and the positive effect of the same exact conversation. So when you are more conscious, you do take more responsibility. But also, I found that personally, when you define your lane of responsibility in the world, friends, family, self, community, whatever you might be doing, I find that personally speaking, my soul is not troubled by overextending responsibility to things that I don't need to take responsibility for. I'm okay with not, and I just can't by necessity. I can't give detailed responses to every single person who comments on my YouTube channel. Can't do it with messages. I used to try, but for about the last year or so, I've not been able to give DM therapy over on Instagram. And quite often, if you message me, I'll just give a like, or unfortunately, it's in the request box, and there's hundreds of messages in there. It's not. It is my responsibility, but what is my greater responsibility? The question that I return to you then, Sapora, is what are you responsible for specifically? And writing those things out. What are you conscious of specifically, and writing them on a different list, and then seeing where the intersection is. I am conscious and aware of these issues, perhaps even the geopolitical issues that are happening right now in the world. I'm responsible for these things. Do you want to move one from one category or another to another category? That's your choice. That's your choice. Book recommendations when you're stuck in a push and pull, leaving and coming back again relationship. I recommend that you read The Eden Project by James Hollis. The Eden Project by James Hollis, and The Invisible Partners by John Sanford. That's The Invisible Partners by John Sanford. Two romantic psychology books that help you understand why you are attracted to that which hurts you, and how you can start becoming attracted to that which heals you, helps you, supports you, and inspires you. Good luck. Don't let this go on forever. This time is says, "Hi Jordan, watching from Vermont. Bet it's beautiful this time of year. My question, what are you most proud of yourself for? Thank you for your much needed content." It's interesting, someone else asked me this question last week. This time last week, someone said, what am I most proud of for the self-integration school in particular? What am I proud of in particular? And I responded then in a very kind of wise, if not performative, wisdom way of, I'm not proud of the self-integration school. I'm proud that I read all these books. I'm not proud that I put together a 700-book curriculum into 104 of the best psychology books in the best course ever. I'm not proud of that. It was merely necessity, my dear child. And I went on that whole spiel. And it was, because it is necessity. I feel a moral responsibility to share my information. Because not even mine. I take partial temporary ownership of the information, and I point towards the teachers who know more than me, and I teach and I work through in a workshop in self-integration school. Is fucking incredible, and it's going to get even more incredible. There's nothing like it in the world. I'm proud of the uniqueness, I suppose, of what I've created in self-integration school, but really, I'm proud that I tried, and I'm proud that I keep trying. There's been a lot of difficulties behind the scenes. A lot of difficulties. The amount of stuff that you have to do with accounting and legals, things you don't think you'll have to do as you run a business, when all you really want to do is have conversations with people that matter. And every other scaffold and structure and legality and legislation. And I don't want to do it. But I do it because it's bureaucratically the thing I have to do. And I've been working through that at the end of the tax year. And that's been a recent thing for me. I'm proud that I still try nonetheless. And I showed up and had an incredible seminar. I'd give it at least a 9 out of 10, my self-integration school students. Had a little break, had a little snack. Here I am doing a live stream, 70 minutes deep. I'm trying. I'm proud of my effort. And I suppose that's the voice that I didn't hear enough of at certain tender ages. Now I give that to myself as an adult. And I think we all need to give that to ourselves consistently and every day. Hopefully that answers the question. Spora says, in response to my previous question about responsibility and consciousness, thank you so much. Your response means a lot to me. Your insight is thought-provoking. Crescent moon, pine tree emoji. Elizabeth says, What do you think of the studies done where your choices can correctly be predicted 11 seconds before you choose them? Before you are even aware of the question, what does that say about free will? Well, parapsychology, the entire world of parapsychology, is quite fascinating. Um, Again, I think we're somewhere between predeterminism and free will. We can kind of bring in the synchronicity question of whether or not deja vu is a wink, a bit of a, but not a very great wink, like a wink from God that you're on the right timeline, or is it your brain just glitching in one way or another? We bring in the whole question of synchronicity. Are synchronicities are synchronicities predetermined events or moments on the many timelines and strands of our life? Or do they happen when the strands happen to meet via different free will decisions between individuals? And that's like, boom, contact, and then we feel the synchronicity, we feel the deja vu. It's an open question. I don't know. I don't know the answer personally. Again, I like to imagine that I have free will. And that might make me delusional, but it certainly keeps me sane. Any more questions for me in the chat? Please do put them in. We can do at least 15 more minutes, but if we are quiet, then I will end the live stream. If you have something that's on your heart or something in your mind and you think would be useful for it on the question of shadow work and self-healing, then let me know right now, or you will miss your chance forever until Sunday. Zoe says, I've read the books, or read the books, and I feel like I know myself, but I feel unsettled geographically. I keep moving from place to place, hoping to feel aligned and secure, but no place feels like home. Anyone else? Zoe, it's tough to know what the right thing to do is without knowing you personally. You could be the type where it doesn't matter where you are geographically, and actually your sense of connection and belonging and purpose in the world isn't tied to a particular geographic location. That's fine. You could abandon the myth that you're meant to live in a forever country. Completely valid in this day and age. You don't have to live in one home or even one country. You can be moving. Yeah, maybe that's worth focusing on. Philosophically speaking, why you keep moving from place to place, but no place feels like home. Maybe a single place won't feel like home. Maybe your home is a sense of movement and mobility and travel. Or a season here, a season there, 1 year here, 5 years there. Completely valid. You can live that way if you want to live that way. You don't need to follow a social script. If you still feel like you're unnerved, it's likely you've got some trauma work to do around belonging and attachment to a physical location. Just have a look at that. Emerald says, have you ever had an energetic release while reading, or what people would some sort of release or shift? Yes, Emerald. Many, many times. Many, many times. You're not reading good books if it doesn't shift something inside of you. My whole idea is that you're not reading a book for information, you're reading it for conversation. You are talking with the author, you are talking with the therapist or the teacher. You're not digesting and dissecting, you are enjoying and appreciating. Say it again, you're not reading books for information, but for an insightful, transformative, therapeutic conversation that changes the way that you approach the printed page forever. That's bibliotherapy to the core. Coffee with cake. Question. I recently witnessed my 10-year-old son, who has sensory autism, openly bury his feelings to avoid conflict and disappointment towards a family member. It broke my heart knowing these situations. Over time, become banished into the shadow. Is introducing him to IFS activities, child-friendly books like Parts of Me, A Teen's Guide to Exploring the Inner World with Internal Family Systems, and the Inner Active Cards deck a good idea, or do I seek professional help? Many blessings. Firstly, well done for being a conscious parent. Secondly, if your child is 10 years old, and they also have pre-existing mental health concerns, if you'd want to use that word. They have pre-existing conditions which mean that they need special attention or special considerations. I'd imagine that involving a professional is probably the best way to go about this. You've already got an idea of what approach is required, which is the part to work approach, but something that's worth emphasizing is that in the same way that the football coach can often give better dating advice to get the boy out of trouble and not hang around with the wrong crowd than the father at home, sometimes when there's therapeutic interventions in a child psychology perspective, it is best to get an outside adult rather than the parent to be the one doing the facilitation, because then you get kind of like a double win. So you get the professional who's the one doing the professional, like emotional work with the child, and then you get to talk with the child as a teammate, as it were, of their experience in the altered reality of the therapist's room. So they get to like post-process with you, post-process with you, and work together as like the team, rather than you creating a dynamic where you open up like the therapist subpersonality within your parenting already. So I'd lean towards professional support, but also again, if this was the first time where something came up, you could give it a professional framing and kind of do the softer, less formal way of creating some emotional regulation and emotional maturity and emotional intelligence. That's highly recommended. But if you want to make it structured and particularly like start recommending therapeutic books for a 10-year-old, I wouldn't do that personally, because otherwise this is no bullshit, right? No bullshit. This is going to be almost every single person listening to this, whether you are a parent or potentially going to become a parent in the future. Please pay attention. I've seen the shadow side of this. I know that I'm going to fall into the shadow side of this if I become a parent. There is a particular kind of agony and feeling of being constantly watched when you are a child of an intelligent parent. I didn't have this experience personally, but when I've worked with clients who had very smart parents or parents who are clinical psychologists, my goodness, the feeling of being on edge because mommy or daddy's always psychoanalyzing me, it causes issues I'm working with people on decades later. So if you already have the awareness of like, you're trying to be a good conscious parent, and like here I am saying be a bit less conscious, it's true. Be a little bit less therapeuticizing, make it more casual, just be a good, nice parent and let your kind of therapeutic language don't my advice, don't use therapy talk with your children. Try and make it more casual and more down to earth where possible. It will help them feel like they're not being watched and dissected. This is only really starts to become an issue around age 9, 10, 11, 12. Younger kids don't really pick up on this, but by this age, preteen into teen, they're really going to feel like, the normal rebellion of stop watching me mom, stop watching me dad. If you are particularly psychoanalyzing them, they're going to rebel and protest and shut you out even stronger, quite likely. So professional help out there, mate, they're the one doing the professional language, you're the one doing the down-to-earth language. Mother and father to child. That generally works a bit better, and you'll avoid them having to spend thousands of pounds or dollars in the future on therapy bills, because you won't accidentally fuck them up that way. Coffee with Cake says, thank you so much, many blessings. It is a pleasure. Happy to help you. Topbot says, have you ever felt that your thoughts are some type of beast, but there is an underlying thinking that's you? Have you ever felt that your thoughts are some type of beast, but there is a underlying thinking that's you? No, not in those words, but if you mean, have I ever felt like my thoughts are happening to me, or that I'm not in control of my thoughts, then yeah, I think that's a really quite normal experience for most people, especially when you're aware of many things and you're always witnessing and monitoring situations. You feel like the voices arise inside of you, and I wouldn't necessarily label them as a beast or a demon or something like this. But you can sometimes feel like the thoughts are the clouds of emotional weather. Sometimes they're white and fluffy, like marshmallows and rainbow butterfly kisses. Sometimes they are dark and stormy, like an inevitable death waiting to happen. But they're still clouds, and you exist as the sky in the background. I can agree with that. I think that's fair to say. And if you are struggling right now, please know you are not the beast. You are the open sky. Final few questions. We're approaching the 1.5 hour mark. If you have any last minute questions for me and you want to use the opportunity, Sapora has been taking notes on the live stream. Top student award, Sapora. Thank you. Might not be working together right now, but still doing the work as we can on YouTube and live streams. I appreciate that you're paying attention, even on the free teaching. Glad that it's useful. I've got 10% battery left on my phone as well, so we need to. Final 3 questions. I can do 3 more questions, get them in the chat. Oh yeah. How do you approach being a love addict where you cling to the initial high of the relationship, but don't get excited about a stable relationship past the initial passion? You need to grow the fuck up. I say that with love. You need to grow the fuck up. You're. So many layers to this. How do you approach being a love addict where you cling to the initial high of the relationship but don't get excited about a stable relationship past the initial passion? You're measuring relationship through the wrong lens. Excitement is not anywhere near the highest values of what a relationship is meant to be. I want an exciting relationship. I want it to feel passionate. I'm playing. I'm doing theatre. I'm on your side. I'm not trying to shame you. I'm just breaking the state and changing it up, to be clear. I want to be passionate. I want to be excited. Why isn't it like how it was the first time we had sex? Oh my god, it's a year into the relation. If you are interested in what we've been talking about in this stream and the higher consciousness possibilities of making meaningful contributions and a real sense of diversity and beauty in all the aspects of who you are, excitement is a slither of what we're aiming towards. If you're looking for a romance, that's fine. But why not look further? If you're looking for an incredible experience of creating a family, excitement is not what you're signing up for. You're signing up for responsibility. If you don't want responsibility, that's fine. But what I would invite you to do is don't beat yourself up. I don't know how old you are, Daria. I mean, you can let me know in the chat. If you're in your 20s and your value is, I want excitement right now and I want passion, that's okay. But if you're in your 30s and you're also considering family and your highest value subconsciously or consciously is I want excitement and passion, you need to update and maturize your relationship belief system to that no longer being fucking relevant. Again, I don't think you have to choose. I'm being dramatic for the sake of just popping the bubble a bit. The kinds of things that you will be looking for in a long-term romantic partner for decades that potentially you raise children with is not what you're looking for in a fun summer fling. Obviously, loads of modern dating psychology around this. Here's a better point. If you're looking for excitement, stop looking for it in a sexual partner. Find it elsewhere. If your life isn't exciting unless you've got a man or a woman that you're sleeping with, it's a boring life. Very boring life. That's what's missing. If you self-satisfy the desire for passion and curiosity and joy in all other relationships, all other aspects of life, your romantic relationship gets to become a whole much wider world of things. So that's my guidance. I'm going to get out of the suddenly intense mood. Again, I'm fully on your side. I get that this is quite a common issue for people, but I hope that pops the bubble just a little bit. Find the excitement elsewhere in your life. Don't lay it all on a sexual partner. And also, maybe spend a bit less time laying down with the sexual partner just to begin with. That's not the standard of relationship. There's much, much, much more to look ahead. If you want the books, I mentioned two of them earlier on. Write it down, get your notes section. Here we go. The Eden Project by James Hollis, The Eden Project, and The Invisible Partners by John Sanford. The Invisible Partners by John Sanford. Two fantastic books on relationship psychology, which are well loved amongst my students. You'll enjoy it. Second to last question. Sapora says on that comment there, I love the deep kind of love that wants to go into the mysterious part of the deep blue sea, but it is hard to meet people who actually want to meet that part of you or themselves. Do my best to meet it on my own. Damn right, you find that excitement in your own soul, Sapora. And then you might be surprised what comes your way. Of course, still make an active effort to go dating and actually make an effort to go meet people. Otherwise, don't expect God to hand you a husband or a wife on your lap, but you get the idea. Have you experienced a synchronicity or premonition dreams? Countless times. Truly countless times. So much so that it's boring. It's just the way that the world works. How arrogant! Oh, he thinks he's a mystic. the majority of people watching this live stream have experienced like weekly synchronicities for years in a row. We're all somewhat schizophrenically delusional, you included. Oh, what are the patterns? What do they mean? Ooh, God's whispering the secret language of the universe to me specifically via the microwave. Oh, I dreamt about them and then it happened. Ah. Obviously, this is just the way the world works. It's always happening. Always happening. Final question. How come all of this is just stuff which is useless when survival is important? I don't know. How come all of this is just stuff which is useless when survival is important? How come all of this is just stuff when survival's... We've reached the end of the stream. That is the end. There's no more questions. You missed your opportunity. We are back on Sunday. If you've enjoyed it, then come back here at the same time next week and same time on Sunday. The candle is done. Here we go. Before you sign off, this is the intentional moment. Don't click off. I'm going to close the space for you. If you're watching live, we're going to close the space, and then you're going to feel like you get an ending. Please don't click. Just watch this. Rather than you tippity tapping away onto something and then you go and scroll somewhere else, let me close the space for you, and you get to feel on the inside what it's like to end something rather than just scroll unconsciously something else. You can then go and watch something else afterwards. I encourage you to go do something fun. But this is what it's like to close space. Whether you've joined me for a minute or for the full hour and a half, I've appreciated you being here with me. Pay attention to the fact, please join me in celebrating the fact that of all the things that you possibly could have done tonight, today, at this moment in human history, over the last 5,000 years of human consciousness progressing towards greater self-actualizing possibilities as we focus on our individual agency in a world of collective chaos, we have chosen to spend time together tonight, look a little bit deeper into the things that matter, open our hearts a little bit wider to the things that we would like to happen. I appreciate you. I'm glad that we spent the time together. And until Sunday, I've been Jordan Thornton, and this has been the Inner Work Library. I'll see you on Sunday.